right, can you hear me now? I have another minute as we start right at 10 after. I sure can. How are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Well, I'm pleased to be able to present this way. It's really helpful for me. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Diener from the University of Auckland. I'm very pleased to see you here, and we're going to be graced with, I think you'll find a very interesting presentation from Perry Samson. As you just heard me talking, we've met a few times up in EDUCAUSE in the United States. He's done some incredible work. Perry is an Arthur F. Thurden, I can see that word there, Thurnow. Did I pronounce that correctly, Perry?
That's right.
Thurnow, professor at the University of Michigan College of Engineering and School of Information. His unique teaching style has been cited by the New York Times, and he has been named the Professor of the Year in the state of Michigan. Quite a prestigious award there. As an entrepreneur, he's co-founder of the Weather Underground. I knew about them, but that was a different Weather Underground, I believe. And lecture tools and the Wild Learning System. If you haven't heard of the Wild Learning System, Perry's done some amazing things, I think, in extraordinary ways to involve students in learning, like assigning students, I saw one, assigning students a temperature and then having them arrange themselves physically to create a jet stream. Interesting things like that. So he's done some incredibly innovative things. He serves as Senior Vice President for Teaching and Innovation for Echo 360. Please welcome Perry to kind of our, I don't see your photograph up there. Is he going to be able to be seen because it's not up here? Okay, that'll be fine. All right, let's welcome Perry Samson.
Well, thank you very much. I hope this camera can't pick up my blushing after that introduction. And first of all, apologies that I cannot be there. When I first applied to come, I had every intention of coming to Auckland. As I love New Zealand, I've done, and my wife and I did some excellent hiking down the Milford Sound. And I got to say, I have a soft spot for the Pinos in New Zealand. And since it's 8 o'clock at night here in Ann Arbor, I will bring some with me. So what I'm going to talk about today is the general discussion is about how data, in my mind, is probably more important than the actual tools that we're going to be using in class. And I'm going to give you, over the course of this conversation, talk about some of the tools that I've been using, and more importantly, the data it collects. Now, I'd like to run this even though I'm thousands of miles away, just like I would a classroom. So if any time along the way you have a question, don't be shy about just raising your hand and yelling it out. And Chris Barnes, who will wave to you now, Chris will relay those questions to me. So we can make this as interactive as if I were, as much as if I was there. So I'm going to also, by the end of this presentation, try to convince you that it's possible to predict who's going to fail your course by the end of week 2. And my interest here is that most of the early warning systems are based on use of quizzes and grades from class. And if we want to understand who's going to be successful, I'd like to be able to catch that student much earlier in the semester. So the use of data and following and understanding student behaviors during class can help us do that. So in my presentation today, I've got some stages here. I think as a baseline, it's useful to capture class. That is, the videos that are in class. Echo 360 does this. You may have your own system. Regardless, what we need to do is to capture the class because it's helpful for the students who are ill, the students who can't make it to class, to have that basis of review. But beyond that, I've got sort of 6 stages you can go through to try ways to make the class more engaging for the students, or let's put it differently, ways to engage students. And the first of which I offer is the capacity to share your slides. Now, some of us do that by uploading our slides into the LMS. At Michigan, I use Canvas. You may use something else. Somehow, want to share slides, and I will demonstrate to you that this is a fairly easy process that is very helpful for students because they have your slides to look at and share after class. The next step, if you just shared your slides, you've already got a great deal more engagement than you had before. Students will have access to your material. But the second stage is something that almost takes a change in pedagogy, and this is somewhat difficult for some faculty. You want to pose questions, and it's not just you're not just doing this for attendance. I don't think I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but posing of questions gives you the opportunity to understand what the students don't understand, and more importantly, it gives the students the opportunity to understand what they don't understand. I'll come back to this in a moment. Next is you want the students to ask questions, and we'll come back. I'm going to talk about this because, yes, we always go and say any questions, and invariably there's no response to that. So we want to create a way for more students to ask questions, and fearlessly ask questions, so they don't be fearful. They wouldn't be fearful about looking stupid in front of their colleagues. There's ways to monitor the progress of your students in class, and I will show you what I do, which is to actually watch and collect everything the students are doing during the class time. And that might sound creepy, but I'm actually measuring how many notes they take, whether they come to class, do they answer my questions, they get the questions right. And these data are very powerful in helping you understand which students are at risk of failing. And the last step is not for the faint of heart, but there are going to be people on your campus, if not you, who would like to do some research. And this system gives you a great deal of research data that can be useful in identifying what is the relationship between what students do and what they're learning. So let me just walk through some of these. And first of all, capture the class. We all walk into class. We all do our thing in class, and it's hugely valuable that this material be recorded and made available to the students. Now, maybe if you're teaching something that's sensitive, I understand, but otherwise, in any other industry, from automobiles here in Detroit to aerospace, why they invariably are testing and following all the time how this is being built. I argue that at the colleges and universities, we should be offering the same sort of ability to see, the making of the sausage. What do we do in the classroom, and how is that of value to the student? Sharing slides. Now, the system that I use is from Echo 360, and Chris can tell you details about that system. But I can share slides by a variety of methods. The first method is simply to take my slides, if I use PowerPoint or Keynote or Prezi, save them and upload them into the web, and then I can present class using basically a web page. And that makes it quite easy for me then to upload slides, and I have then access to all the slides. They're in the cloud. I can walk to any computer, anywhere in the world, and teach my class. Second option comes back to the fact that I have a hard time, to be blunt, getting my colleagues at the University of Michigan to try new things in the classroom. Now, I've been to New Zealand, and I appreciate that you guys are out there and you try more stuff faster than we do in the States. So I'm challenged to try to get my colleagues to do new things in the classroom. So what Echo did, and I think it was brilliant, was to build the tools right into PowerPoint. So if you're using PowerPoint, you don't have to do anything new. You are going to Basically, there is a what they call a ribbon inside the PowerPoint, and if I click that button, my slides are instantly shared with my students. So I have my PowerPoint deck. I don't have to do anything new except click a button once to share my slides with the students. That's brilliant. And then there's also a button over here called New Activity. This is sweet. I can add questions into my PowerPoint that would be posed to the students, and as they answer it, the results are also shown right there in PowerPoint. And again, I don't have to do anything different except run my PowerPoint class. So that's one. And then there's another model for those who like to do a flipped class or such. There's an app that you can use to record video, add questions to it, and then upload that for your students to view and respond to, maybe prior to class or after class as you wish. So there's a variety of ways for you to share your slides, and I think there's value in doing that by itself. That will be very much appreciated by most students to have that access. Now, I do that to remind you that it's all built into PowerPoint. Now, here's PowerPoint, for example. Here are my slides for one of my classes, and there's a button up here. It's called a ribbon, and with that button, that's where I'm able to add activities, and if I change the slides in the PowerPoint deck, I simply hit the button here, and the slides are instantly, again, updated and shared with my students. So we're trying to make it a low-level lift for the instructor because we understand that they're very busy and have other obligations. But this is a simple way for you to maybe make your class more active, build in questions, and get feedback. This system that I use, Echo 360, has the capacity then that students can see the slides that I'm showing. If there's a camera in the room, they can see me roaming around the room and just pointing at things. And also they see what's being projected, and they can click any one of these and make them bigger in the screen. But they can also then click a button and take notes. I'm going to come back to this because the notes are a fantastic resource for you. I'm going to show you how we are mining these notes and the value of what's in those notes. It's going to be instructive to the student. It's possible to be able to mine the notes and demonstrate to the student why and how their notes are maybe lacking and how their notes are maybe above average. So there's mining these notes is going to come back. We'll talk about this at the end, about the value of that. The third point in all this is that, all right, now you're going to pose questions. And here's some quotes from a couple of research articles about formative assessment. The formative assessment is so powerful. You have the opportunity in class to help the students understand what they don't understand. So you're going to pose questions and wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm asking you a question because you're probably going to see that again sometime in a later quiz or exam. So it's the opportunity to present to them the kinds of the things you'd like them to be able to answer, for them to respond, and for you then to have a conversation about whether the answer is correct or not. For example, now many of you in the room here may know atmospheric science. Here's a question: what makes the atmosphere less stable? And this is from my class this semester. You can see 114 students got the right answer, that you heat the surface and cool off. That makes the atmosphere less stable. Well, that's interesting. But with this system, I can click another button, and it's going to ask the students, when they answer A, B, C, or D, why did they choose that letter? And that's interesting. So then I can click on the letter B, for example, and it'll show me the justifications for the students who chose B. Now think about this in your own teaching. The value of this is that you can walk through their logic. There's no names on here, so it gives them the opportunity to try, and you're not going to give them feedback about what, I would not give this a high grade, this answer a high grade because it's not complete. This answer is just too short, and or here's an answer that says it's air to float. That's just stupid. So there are no names there, so they can make fun of them. But it's just a great opening for a dialogue, a conversation, instead of simply a didactic kind of lecture. Plus, it's possible to get the right answer for the wrong reason. Likewise, I can click on the wrong answers and see what the logic is there and talk about it. Why is that a wrong answer? So you can imagine how this opens up class to more of a conversation. Being in meteorology, I like to ask questions about maps, weather maps and such. Here's one I might ask in class. What part of this image does not make sense to you and why? Now, you can look at this image on your own and imagine where you'd put a dot right now. This is every hurricane, typhoon, and cyclone since 1950. And the student would then put a dot on the map, and the little dialog box will pop up where they have to tell me why they chose that spot. Then, after a few minutes, I can show where the students voted, and I can go around and pick on any one of these dots. Being in somewhat of a mischievous mood that day, I decided to pick on this kid in the middle of South America because that was just a ridiculous spot to put a dot. And I click on that dot and see that they ask the question, why are there no storms coming off the coast of South America? Well, that's a fantastic question. I probably wouldn't have talked about that, but okay. This allows the students to have inquiry during class, and this way I can talk about why are there no hurricanes here in the South Atlantic when there are plenty in the North Atlantic. What's the difference in the two basins? Why would one produce hurricanes and the other one wouldn't? And go click on another dot. Why are there no hurricanes along the equator? Is that significant? Well, that's an excellent question, and it comes back to the fact there's no Coriolis force at the equator, so the storms there are many storms, so they simply can't organize into a circulating pattern near the equator. So, and I can go from literally dot to dot and just talk about their questions, and in that dialogue, what you've done is you've sort of changed the nature of your class to be far more inquiry-based and more of a conversation than simply lecturing for the whole time. And there's lots of research that suggests that if you can do that, it's going to improve the amount of engagement and learning from the students. And then the fourth step is getting your students to ask questions is like, oh my gosh, it's like trying to pull teeth. I don't know how many of you have had the experience where you go, any questions? Yeah, that's the response you get. Yeah, nobody ever says anything. And over the course, I've been teaching, this is my 38th year at the University of Michigan. And over the course of the previous 36 years, I would do that thing. I'd say, any questions? There's no questions. I assumed that I had articulated it so clearly that they all walked out of there understanding it. And, throw the chalk down, do a little victory dance, and feel like I really nailed it. But with this system, students can ask questions digitally during class. Now, I can look at those questions. I can look at those questions myself during class, or I've got a teaching assistant who can answer them for me as class is going on. But the important point is that students can ask the questions when they have them during class. And here you can see that students, again, here's all their windows here. Over here they can view the questions that have been asked, and you'll see no names. So the questions and the answers are there, and everybody can see both, but you don't see who asked the question. So now you can ask the stupid question fearlessly. And it's easy to pose questions. You can answer each other's questions, or you can leave it for me to answer it after class, or my teaching assistant to answer it. But the huge and important part here is let them ask the questions during class. I asked my students in a survey on day one, how comfortable are you asking a verbal question in class? And what I find is that for the male students, it's 40-ish% agree that they're comfortable asking questions verbally. But for the female students, it's less than a quarter. I didn't know this, and for all the previous 35 years, that means I've been conducting a class with uneven playing field, where not everyone's willing to participate at the same level. But if you allow them to ask questions digitally during class, lo and behold, number one, it's going to be sobering. You're going to discover how confusing you've been all these years. because last semester I got 413 questions submitted. And the other big news for me was that now the female students are actually asking more questions per capita than the male students. We've at least leveled the playing field. Everyone is willing to ask questions now. Students for whom English is not their native language are asking as many questions as the rest of the students. You know, that alone, give the students a chance to participate, and they will. But they have to feel comfortable. And many students are first-generation students. They don't necessarily feel like they belong in school, and they're uncomfortable participating verbally. I want them, in at least the first years in particular, to have the opportunity to ask the questions and see that your questions are no dumber than anybody else's questions. All right. Questions? All right. Could you paraphrase it, please? I understand. No, it's a good question, and I get that often. I don't have necessarily a good answer for you. The hypothesis I'm running under is that, given my experience over the many years I've been teaching, that students tend not to ask questions. And yes, and first of all, you should understand, I still encourage them to ask questions verbally. And those who want to, I'm pleased to have that happen. I will walk out into the audience and actually, stare at them and ask them to ask me a question. But many are uncomfortable doing that. I still want them to participate. I don't want them to be fearful of participating just because they're nervous about speaking. So they can, yes, I would argue that, but maybe by their third year, they should be willing to raise their hand and participate. Maybe the second year also. But that first year in particular, students coming into the institution are often not confident, and they need the opportunity to see that they do belong in this community and that their questions are valid. So I understand your question, but I'm hoping, and given the numbers I'm seeing, that the proof is in the typing, that students are willing to do this and open to doing this. I would like to do a longitudinal study to see if, in fact, the students who've gone through this in later years actually did now become more confident. That's a study to be done. I hope that answered the question. All right, thank you. All right, the fifth step. Another question? All right. The fifth step in this is mining the data. Now, a system like this collects a remarkable amount of data about what students are doing during class. I didn't mention this. The students can even indicate when they're confused during class. And there's a meter on my screen which shows me how many students are confused. And I should also step back for a second and tell you that in my class, the room holds 100 seats, and my class has about 220 students in it. So day one is messy, but other than that, this Echo software lets me just click a button, and the class is automatically broadcast live. and students can move forward. I can sit at home and still participate. So in that way, I can sense what students are doing even if they're not in the class, and this is all the data being collected. I'm able to get data from the system about how many students are taking notes and how many notes per student are happening. I can see that days like here with moisture, they took more notes. Here, general circulation took notes. Here's a guest lecturer. So I can get some data about what's happening in my class I've never had before. I should tell you that with this hybrid model where I'm broadcasting attendance, where attendance is measured that the students either coming physically to class or watching from away, attendance is actually far higher than I've ever had in my life, averaging about 85% per day over the whole semester. And I probably don't have time today to talk about it, but I'm doing research now on how students learn versus whether they come to class or not come to class. This data is part of a bigger ecosystem where I collect data from the LMS, I collect data from the student information system and other vendors into one database. I strip away the student identity, and now I can do research and have students do research for me. So I can see, for example, that students coming to class, attending either online or in class, the more you attend class, the higher your grades are. You can bet that this is a slide I show my students on day one next semester, because it's kind of evidence that actually backs up the kinds of things we've always claimed. On the other hand, I can see the students who average 90 or above in my class, 65% of the time they physically came to class, 28% of the time they watched from away, and 7% of the time they didn't come to class at all. Whereas the students who did poorly only came to class 27% of the time, watched from away about half the time. So again, evidence. So where I'm working with a student, I can give them a graph like this and show them here is exactly evidence from last semester showing you why you should get out of bed and come to class. It's strong evidence that maybe this physical classroom has value. We see relationships in note-taking, but I'm not going to stand here and say this is particularly significant. There is a trend here. I'm not very impressed by that, but I am impressed by this measure. Basically, the value of asking questions during class. If you ask questions and the students are getting it right, they're probably going to do well on the exam. And this shows that you got more than 60% of my questions right, you averaged 93. If you got fewer than 30% of my questions right, you averaged 68. So whether you're using clickers or Echo 360 or whatever, use the data about formative assessment because it's going to be a strong indicator of which students you need to worry about. And I'd like to put it this way, that student behaviors tend to predict student outcomes. But turn it around. It turns out that prior student outcomes, what is their GPA walking into class, their grade point coming into class, what's the previous success in the classroom, is actually, you'll see that the previous success is linked to behavioral differences in the classroom. Let me put it this way. Here's the incoming grade point versus exam 1 scores. You can see a relationship. But turn it around. What is it about these students with a low grade point coming into class? Well, ones with a low grade point, this is the minutes of lecture capture viewed in class. So the ones who had high grade points are averaging 22 minutes. The low grade point, it's 1 minute. Students with a high grade point coming into class, they are averaging 130 words per class of notes. Students with lower grade points, that's 2. So this is the kind of data, the instructor should see, but also the advisors should have access to this, to be able to talk to a student about why. I mean, here's real data for why you should change your behavior. And lastly here, this is the students with a high grade point coming into the class. They physically come to class, about 70% of the time. They watch from away at maybe 25% of the time. Students with a low grade point coming to class almost never come to class physically. They watch from away half the time and blow class off half the time. Again, who knew that? So I go back to the fact that data is the key here. And let's not talk about that because I'm running out of time, but what I did is I've entered all the data from the LMS, all the data from this ecosystem, all the data from other vendors And the things that are most important in predicting student grades are those measures that you do in the classroom. Measuring their note-taking, measuring how they attend, measuring how many slides they view during class are all very predictive then of what student success is likely to be in the class. And I've taken to this, so this semester, I predicted after week 2 the grades the students would get on the first exam. And I predicted 4 would fail who failed. I predicted 26 would pass who failed, and 113 who would pass who passed. So on the whole, the accuracy is about 80% after week 2. So here's a point at which I don't know what to do about this, of course, but at least I have some idea of which students I have to be worried about. And I'm working now on trying to design interventions that I could use in the classroom to try to capture these students I'm predicting will fail, and show them the graphs, give them some information about here is what success looks like in my class, and this is what you're doing. See if I can somehow change their behaviors or convince them to change their behaviors in class. All right, so I'm at the end here. I'd just like to say again that collecting data is in the future is going to be a key to educational technology. And yeah, you got your LMSs and you got every company trying to sell you educational technology. Do me 2 things. One, if they're not giving you all the data back for free, fire them. And number 2, find somebody on campus who wants to collect these data and relate them to grades and other outcomes, because there's a rich value in that, and it's going to be of value to the student as well as to the institution. All right, I got time for questions. The question is, oh yes, and Chris, who's standing there, has them in his person, so he'll be happy to share with you. Also, yeah, I'm doing all right. Don't worry about me. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.